Welcome to Yoga Insider. I'm your host, Alexandria Waycott. I've been teaching yoga for well over a decade, and I've created this podcast for yoga teachers who are running their own businesses and who are looking for a modern and grounded approach to navigating the yoga industry. This week, I'm talking about some of the pitfalls that yoga teachers face when they try to run pre-registered classes. Let's dive into the episode. One of the most common questions that I get asked by other yoga teachers is how I've been able to successfully run pre-registered yoga classes, like yoga series, every single month on an ongoing basis. And for those who don't know, I have run pre-registered yoga series for years. And I think that this is a really great question because it tells me that other yoga teachers out there are curious and interested in the possibility of building something like this in their own yoga business. And, maybe they're thinking of doing things a little bit differently and stepping outside of the typical ways that you might think of teaching yoga. And this episode is for those teachers. So this is for the yoga teachers who are building something for themselves, who think outside the box and who are kind of trailblazing and paving their own path. And I want to chat about pre-registered classes today. So the first thing I want to address, kind of in my own words, is what is a pre-registered class, just in case you're not quite sure what that is. And so the best way that I can describe this is that pre-registered classes are typically classes that run for a set amount of time. So you can think of this as like signing up your child for dance lessons, for example, and classes will run for a predetermined amount of time, like 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatnot. Students will commit to attending the same class at the same time every week, and then they pay ahead of time for the classes in most cases. So you can see this almost like you're paying tuition for a course, for example. And pre-registered classes are amazing because your students will get to travel together as like a cohort through the classes. And this lends itself towards a learning environment where you can introduce yoga education that is really progressive and where you can kind of like build on the things that you did in weeks prior. And it's also a super community-minded way of teaching, right? Because people are naturally going to get to know each other. And then for you as a teacher, it's a great way for you to build on your teaching skills, refine your teaching skills, and in a lot of cases, eventually pay yourself more than you might be getting paid if you were working for someone else. So there is a lot of opportunity there, but it's also something that requires a lot of hard work. And I want to kind of address some of those things today. Some of the common pitfalls that I see yoga teachers falling into when they try to run pre-registered classes and they just don't go like exactly how they thought they were going to go and they end up being discouraged. I want to chat about like why that might be and how we can kind of reframe things so that you can have more success in your pre-registered classes. This is not an uncommon teaching model. Like it definitely exists around the world. But I would say it's just not as common as like the typical drop-in studio membership kind of teaching model. You might be wondering like, okay, sounds great, but like, why would I run classes like this? And I want to talk just a little bit more about, why this will be beneficial for both your students and for you as a teacher as well. So in terms of your students, again, if you really value education, this is a great opportunity to bring more education to your students and teach them in a way where they can build on their skills over the course of weeks or months or years. And so you can see this as like almost teaching in a bit of a curriculum. And what I've found is that it can be really fun and really enriching for everyone to work with monthly themes, for example. So in the past, we've done like chakra theme or the koshas or the vayus, different families of poses, parts of the body, like the opportunities with theming are endless. And for you as a teacher, that kind of teaching is going to give you a chance to like dive really deep into those specific subjects so that you can expand your knowledge, refine the way that you teach, and it's just really beneficial for everyone. Again, this is a great opportunity to build community. And this is something that's so sweet. Like probably my favorite part about these classes is that people are naturally going to get to know each other in this kind of environment. And you'll notice that people, they start to recognize each other each week and they start to chat, and then they realize like, oh, that person is my neighbor, or they live in the same area as me. They realize that maybe their kids go to the same school, or they have some shared hobbies or interests, or, they have like a mutual friend or something like that. And in my pre-registered classes, I think that this social connection that happens is like so important and so valuable for people. And it's one of the reasons why I never enforce a silence policy at the beginning of class. I'm always there 30 minutes before both of my classes so that people can come in and sit and chat with each other. And sometimes I think that like if I didn't just start the class, people would just sit there and chat for ages. And you start to see things happening where like people are trading books with each other, or they're like giving away a bag of pet food that their pet doesn't like anymore. It's just like, it's super, super sweet. And I think especially like those social connections are so important for, the older adults who come to class who might be a little bit isolated, people who work remotely, new moms with like young babies and young kids who maybe just don't get to have like a lot of adult conversation during the day. I think that this is one of those benefits of community yoga where we are practicing like in a sangha, in a group, where we see those benefits ripple outwards and really impact people's lives, like off the mat. And so that is huge for me. And of course, you can get those kinds of feelings like in a studio space as well. And you're always going to have, your regulars who come, but you're also going to have people who are dropping in and out and, they come once and they don't come again. And this starts to feel like a bit of a tighter knit community, I find, with pre-reg, because you really do have the same people in the same classes month after month, year after year. And obviously there's, a little bit of fluctuation where some people go and new people join. But that's just like a huge benefit if you are looking to build meaningful community as a yoga teacher. Like definitely run pre-registered classes. For you as the teacher, like I mentioned previously, there is opportunity to build more income for your business. And I want to preface this by saying that it typically doesn't come right at the beginning, and building up that revenue is probably going to take a bit of time and quite a lot of hard work. But I think that if you're somebody who is working for other people right now, and maybe you have like hit the ceiling where you're an amazing teacher and you wish you could get paid more, and the place that you're teaching also wishes that they could pay you more, but they just don't have the budget, right? And that's totally understandable, especially in this economy right now. Like, you're going to get to a place where no matter how amazing you are, no matter how much experience you have, that like places are only going to be able to pay you so much. So if you are looking to kind of break through that ceiling that you might be encountering, this is an opportunity to potentially pay yourself a lot more per class. And that has definitely been the case for me. When I first started running pre-registered classes, I definitely wasn't bringing in the revenue for my yoga business that I am bringing in now. But over time, as those classes have built up and, have become really consistently full, I'm paying myself hundreds of dollars per class. And I definitely wasn't getting paid close to that when I was working for other people. So just financially, this can be a really smart move for you if you are looking to expand in your yoga business. And then the other thing that I love, this is for students and teachers, is that you have the opportunity when you work with the same students over and over again for an extended period of time to establish a relationship with them, to establish, a more traditional like student-teacher relationship where you get to know your students. You have the opportunity to observe them. You see how they move. You know their injuries. You know their tendencies. And over time, you are able to offer them a more personalized experience. And this is so, so valuable for your students. And again, for you as a teacher to learn how to adapt based on all of these different situations that you're presented with, because everybody's showing up to class with, a very unique body and with unique needs. And I just think that you can't get that level of personalization, like that depth in terms of personalization in drop-in classes, even if you're an incredible experienced teacher. Like if you've only seen someone practice one time, you're not going to be able to assist them in their practice in the way that you could when you've been working with the same student for like 10 years, right? So that's just a huge benefit, is this opportunity to form deeper relationships with your students and for them to get to know each other. So, what I've noticed is that a lot of people will try this teaching model one time and then it doesn't go quite how they thought it would, and then they stop. And today I want to talk about why that happens and, what you might do instead to try to work around some of those issues that could potentially come up. So just for a little bit of background, I've been teaching yoga for almost 14 years. So I'm heading into my 14th year of teaching. And when I first started teaching, I taught everywhere. So I taught in studios, community centers, gyms, university campuses. I taught in like a pharmacy that had this weird little multi-purpose room attached to it. It was like the weirdest place for yoga. I taught in basements. I taught in people's backyards. Like I literally said yes to everything. And that served me really well at the time because I was really young. I was a university student and I really enjoyed teaching yoga. I was introduced to yoga when I was 5 years old. And so it's something that I grew up with and something that was very normal to me. I knew from the time that I was 5 years old that I wanted to be a yoga teacher. And it felt like, when I was finally able to teach, that like I was doing this thing that I'd been waiting my whole life to do. And so, it was very rewarding and I was very enthusiastic about teaching at the time, and I still am. But early on, I did experiment with running pre-registered series, but what I want to note is that they weren't ongoing. So I would run just like one series, and it was totally random, and I would do like a chakra series or like yoga for beginners or an intro to yoga kind of series. And they were great and I would have lots of fun doing them. And I would be like, that was awesome. I made more money than I normally would teaching regular classes, but I never ran them consistently back to back. So it would just be like one thing. And then I would be like, okay, now it's done. And then just carry on, with my public classes. And I'm not sure why I didn't commit to them as like an ongoing thing. Again, it could have been because I was really young. I was definitely doing lots of traveling in my 20s and kind of coming and going. And yeah, maybe I just had other things on my mind. I was also working towards other aspirations in life that weren't only teaching yoga. But as I've matured into my role as a yoga teacher, what I've found is that there is so much value in, making this teaching model a really primary part of my yoga business. And especially because, autonomy is something that's so important to me. And I'm one of those people who likes to like do my own thing and march to the beat of my own drum. It has allowed me to teach in a way that is very authentic to me and that feels super liberating and exciting. When I think back to like COVID times, obviously COVID changed things for so many people. when we look back at that time for yoga teachers who have been doing this for a long time, I feel like that was like a big kind of catalyst for change in people's yoga teaching careers, for better and for worse. And so in 2020, things were really inconsistent rather on the studio side of things for good reason. And I was, really determined, even though studios were closing and things were just unpredictable, I was really determined to continue showing up for the students that I had been teaching. Because if you were around teaching at that time, you probably know that, depending on where you were living in the world, that there was a lot of students just kind of floating around being like, where am I going to go to yoga class now? Because my favorite studio closed or whatnot. And just prior to COVID, end of 2019, I had started filming a bunch of online yoga classes. And I was doing that with the intention of maybe creating an online platform or whatnot. And it ended up being this kind of excuse me, divine timing where, this happened and I was like, oh, I have all these online classes. And so I ended up creating an online platform and teaching a bunch of online group classes, but also tons of private sessions for people that I had been working with previously, in studio. And so that was a really great way to stay connected with those people that I'd already been working with. And then when things started to open up just a little bit, and I live just outside of Vancouver, Canada, I was like, okay, I need to find something where I can teach in a way that's more consistent for my students. And this is when I decided to really commit to pre-registered classes and kind of step out on my own as what I would call an independent yoga teacher. And so I ended up renting a space and running classes. And there were a lot of rules at the time. So I could only have a handful of students per class. And people signed up, people came, and I would have to run 2 classes back to back to kind of accommodate everybody who wanted to come. But when I think back to that time and that initial commitment to okay, I'm going all in, I'm going to run pre-registered classes every single month, I had a name for my pre-registered series, and I don't have a name for it anymore. But at the time, the series was called Slow Burn. And when I look back at that name, I just think that couldn't be any more fitting or any funnier because if I were to describe the process of building up pre-registered yoga classes into something sustainable and into something that has longevity, this was a slow burn. It's been a really, really slow process. And so this isn't for teachers who are looking for instant gratification or who are looking for quick cash or something like that. This is something that you have to build over time. And so if you're in it, you've really got to be in it for the long game, and it has potential to be really rewarding, but it just might not be rewarding right away. So I don't think it would be helpful for me to tell you every little detail of exactly how I run my pre-registered classes, because everybody's situation is different, right? Depending on who you teach, depending on where you're located geographically. And with this podcast, I hope that it is implied that there is nuance in every situation, and that what I say isn't going to work for everyone, right? So take it with a grain of salt. But one of the most common pitfalls that I see, and one of the things that I've observed so often, is teachers will try to run a pre-registered series one time. They will become discouraged and then they'll stop. Okay. And I've had so many teachers come to me and be like, I'm so excited. I'm running a series. I have everything set up. I found the space. I've chosen, the type of class that I'm going to teach. I've, created these beautiful assets to promote it. And they have such good intentions. Like we all have good intentions, right? We're all coming from a place of service because we have something that we know is valuable and we know is going to help people. And then these teachers, they go and they run their classes, and then they start to encounter challenges that to me are inevitable, but maybe they end up being challenges that these teachers just didn't anticipate were going to show up. So it might be things like you don't get the type of registration that you thought you were going to get, and maybe just a couple of people sign up. I've seen instances where people, will sign up for class and then they drop out at the last minute and they want a refund. And suddenly that teacher is like, oh my gosh, I don't even have a refund policy. I never thought about this. I didn't anticipate that these kinds of situations were going to come up. And, maybe they just break even. Maybe they even end up paying to teach, which totally sucks. Nobody wants that to happen. But this is one of the most common stories that I hear. And I think one of the reasons that this happens is that, teachers will get inspired by other teachers who are maybe doing really well with their pre-registered series. And they're expecting some sort of a big payoff on the first try. And they think that there's going to be all these fireworks and it's going to be amazing. And it's actually womp womp. There's 3 people in your class. They might also realize that it's a lot more work than they expected, right? Because when you do things independently as an independent yoga teacher, you're responsible for everything, right? So you've got to decide, where you're going to teach, how you're going to find a space for your classes, who your ideal client is, how are you going to find those students and get the word out to them? How are you going to market your classes? What are you going to do if you have to cancel a class? Are you going to sub it out? Are you going to try to run a makeup class? Are you going to offer a refund? There's a lot of work involved behind the scenes, and not everybody wants to do that extra work, and that's totally fine. But I think that is kind of one of the common scenarios that happens. And what I want to recommend, if that's you or if that's ever been you, is that you have to see pre-registered yoga classes as more of a long-term investment in your yoga business and your yoga offerings. And I want you to know, first of all, it's okay to be discouraged, but don't be discouraged. You should actually be so proud of yourself for stepping out on your own and trying something that a lot of people don't have the courage to do. That's huge. But also know that these types of classes are probably going to grow in a very slow way, especially when you are doing things totally independently. It might be different for people who have a big studio or a big organization behind them, people who are maybe more well-connected in their communities. But for a lot of yoga teachers, this is something that's going to build up really, really slowly over time. And we live in an age where everybody wants instant gratification. Everybody just wants things to happen right away. And you're probably not going to get that with these types of classes. And even if you do, even if they were super, super busy right away, I would question the sustainability of that. Are all of those students going to stick around month after month, or are they going to kind of go off and do their own thing? So, see this as this is something that's going to grow over time. Try not to look for instant validation in it or instant gratification. And know that, your early rounds, your first, few tries of running pre-reg, they might not be profitable. If you can break even, that's awesome. But just kind of frame this as maybe I'm going to pay myself in the future for these classes, but these initial classes that I'm running, ideally run them even if they're small so that people can start to see that the classes are actually running, because it takes people a while to realize that things are even happening. And that's really going to help you also build trust and establish yourself as somebody who is running, whatever type of class you're hoping to run. Okay. There is a second pitfall that I see quite often. And this is where people build momentum in their pre-registered classes, whatever type of series they're running. And then they take a break and they lose that momentum that they built. So maybe they run a couple of series that do really well. And again, they see like more revenue in their business than they normally would. And then they take an extended pause. So it could be that they go on a vacation, or like they're tired or uninspired and they need a break from teaching, or life gets busy or whatnot. And they don't show up for like a while. So maybe they go like 4 months or 6 months or whatever, and they don't run a series. And then when they relaunch their pre-registered series, they don't see the kind of signups that they had before. And it might, again, feel kind of discouraging and feel almost like, you're starting from scratch. But one of the things that I think is important to understand is that the way for this model to work and stick is through your consistency. So yes, you can take breaks, but your offerings need to follow some kind of a rhythm that is predictable. And I think, when people ask me, like, Alex, how are you running pre-registered classes? How are they doing so well? And, they think I have some kind of secret. And my secret is not anything glamorous. It's that I have been super, super consistent with my offerings. I run pre-registered classes 12 months of the year. Every single week, I run 4 classes a week. I rarely cancel. Maybe once a year, I have to cancel a class because there's like an ice storm or something like that. But it means that I show up to teach when I'm tired. I show up to teach when I'm, less than inspired. Sometimes I teach when I'm, not feeling my best or feeling under the weather. And I know that, not everybody will like that. Not everyone will agree with that kind of like work ethic, but I am a bit of a workhorse. And I think that consistency, like just showing up over and over and over again, is what has helped me create something that is sustainable. And I'm happy to report that I'm at a place now where I can sub out my classes from time to time. I'm in a place where, if I want to attend an event that's important to me, I want to go on vacation, I want to take some time away to attend some training or some continuing education for myself so that I can be inspired when I teach. I'm able to sub out my classes, and my students know that like I'll be coming back, right? That's temporary. I think that when you're running pre-registered classes and you're like the exclusive teacher of those classes, people are coming to those classes for you, right? Like there's something about what you're specifically offering and the way that you teach that people are drawn to. And it's so amazing. Like that's why, every teacher has something unique to offer. But what I would say to those people who are kind of having some success with like running a few series and then you're taking a long break and you're having a hard time getting that momentum back is that consistency is what helps us build trust with our students. And I think that from a psychological perspective, people like to know what to expect. They like to know that you are going to be reliable, that they can depend on you. They like to know what to expect in your class, and that even if your students come and go, as they naturally will, they know that like, I'm still going to be there welcoming them with open arms when they're ready to come back. And so you've got to be really, really consistent. And if you're teaching pre-registered classes in a way that is seasonal, so like say you want to teach pre-reg, but like only in the summertime, that's okay. But you need to communicate that these classes are seasonal. Like you have to let people know really, really clearly that I only run these classes in the summertime and this is why you should come. And then you need to repeat that rhythm every single summer, right? Because people like to know what to expect. And so that element of predictability creates this almost like psychological safety or like psychological trust, right, with your students. So just know that you've got to keep showing up, okay? One of the last pitfalls that I'll address today and there's kind of like two sides to this, so I'll try to explain that, is that people will try to launch pre-registered classes in a place where nobody knows them, okay? And there's two different ways that I see this happening. One is where people might try to launch pre-registered classes in a community where they don't live, or where they haven't like established that relational groundwork with their potential students. So that means maybe they've never taught public classes in that community. Maybe they haven't attended other people's classes in that community. Maybe they don't have a lot of connections there. And then the other kind of similar thing that I see happening once in a while is somebody will try to run pre-registered yoga classes like fresh out of yoga teacher training. And I don't want to discourage you from trying to run pre-reg outside of yoga teacher training. But just know that the success of those classes will vary depending on your individual circumstances. So maybe you just graduated from YTT and you work in a public-facing job and you're like really extroverted and you know lots of people who are ready to take your class and like waiting to take it. Or maybe you're well connected with like a studio or some kind of clinic or like wellness business in your community, and they're ready to kind of like back you up and funnel some of their clients into your classes. Like that's one of the ways where it could be successful right away. But a lot of times when we're brand new to teaching and we just haven't been in front of our community as yoga teachers yet, it can be a little bit harder to build up your classes right in the beginning. And you might find that you're just not getting the kind of registration that you want. So again, you need to build that relational groundwork, whether you are a new yoga teacher or whether you are an experienced yoga teacher, but somebody who's coming in from a different community and just doesn't have those connections yet. And my recommendation is to connect with the existing yoga community that's already there. So take people's classes, find out, what's going on in the scene, teach like publicly. So teach at other people's businesses first to establish yourself and get in front of an audience, and take your time to establish a reputation. And I think that will help you when it is time for you to run pre-registered classes. And again, like I said, I've been doing this for 14 years, and I spent a solid decade teaching public classes and building a reputation and showing up really consistently, even when I was teaching publicly. And I think that's what made it viable for me to shift in this direction and run pre-registered classes really as like one of the exclusive ways that I work with the public these days. Obviously, my other work is continuing ed for yoga teachers and 200-hour yoga teacher trainings. And so, students who want to practice with me, they're not going to find me in a studio. They have to come to me directly. And I think that it was helpful to have put in the work and taught for a long time before I got to that place. So if you've tried running pre-registered classes and it didn't work the first time, it doesn't mean that it didn't work for you. Okay, so remember that we have to kind of lay the groundwork, if you will, and that means that we might run classes that are small for a little while. I think that running pre-registered yoga classes independently has been one of the best things that I could have ever done as a yoga teacher to build a business that is sustainable. It has given me the freedom to teach in a way that feels really authentic to me and aligned with my values as a yoga teacher. And I know that because I'm teaching in an authentic way, I'm going to attract the students who want to be there, and we're going to have a good time. And people are either going to like you or they won't, and that's great. yeah, and I get to teach without having to fit into someone else's mold. And if that resonates with you, then this is definitely something worth looking into. But just know that, if your first round doesn't feel like it's perfect or it doesn't feel like it's amazing, that's totally okay, because this is something that has to build really slowly. And it should build slowly, right? Because anything that is going to be sustainable, anything that is going to last for a long time needs to have a really strong foundation. So show up consistently, trust that what you have to offer is valuable and is important even before, anybody else catches on to what you're doing. And yeah, I think that there's so much potential in pre-registered classes, especially if you are looking to build genuine community connections and if you are looking to boost your income as a yoga teacher. So if this episode is inspiring or interesting or helpful at all for you, definitely make sure to rate the episode wherever you're listening so that more yoga teachers around the world can connect in these kinds of conversations. And I can't wait to see you next time. Thanks.